Hey guys, today we will explore incremental load in Qlik. So we'll see what is incremental load and what are its types, and we will go through one example today. So basically, we have three modes or three types, right? In incremental load, we have insert and update, and insert, update, and delete. Okay. So today we will see an example for insert. So basically, what is incremental load? So let's say I have this data source. Okay, it could be an Excel or database or whatever. So it's a transaction source. So we are capturing the transactions on date, right? Every day there could be multiple transactions. So now I have this data set. I'm loading this into Qlik. And tomorrow, this data set will keep growing, right? So you will get the new data appended into this. So tomorrow, when I want to pull this data, I don't have to pull this entire volume again and again every time, right? Instead, what I need is this new set of data alone, assuming the old data set has not changed. So that's the first scenario. So today we are going to assume the old data is not going to change and only the new data is going to get appended. So all we have to do is identify what is a new set of record and pull only those set of record and append it with the old record or concatenate with the old record. So that's incremental load. So okay, so we are so to do that, we have to know which is new and which is old, right? So I have these records already captured in QED in my dashboard. And now, if I want to pull only the new record, then I will use this column, the transaction date, or the normally the ETL update date, or whatever date you have, right? As a reference, you can go with that date. So what I will do is, when I load the data, I will say load only the records which are greater than this date or the max date out of this entire data. So the max date is 6 June 24. So I will say, I'll put an where clause saying load only the data which is above this date so that I will get only the new records. And then that I will concatenate with the old data. Okay, so this is what we are going to implement. Let me go to the app. So I have two apps. One is to extract the data and store it in QED. Another is my uh, incremental load application. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull the data. I'll delete this QED. So I have this data set. Okay, let me name it as sales data. So now I'm going to read this data and store this into a QED. Okay, I'll call this as sales dot QED. Once I store this, I don't need this table anymore. I'll drop this table. Okay. So in any development, this is our first step, right? So connect to the data source, pull the data, store it into QED, drop the table. Let me reload this. Okay. So I could see 6 lines fetched. Okay. Let me save this. I will go to the application. Now here I'll pull that data. Sales QED. I'll just name this as sales. So now let me reload this. Let me create a table box. Okay, so we have 6 records, whatever we saw in the Excel. Okay, so far good. Now my data set changes, so I'm getting two additional records. let's say product ID 1, 2, category ID 2, 3. So okay, on 7th of June, I have two transactions. So these are my new data set. Okay. So now I have to load only these two new records from the source, and I have to concatenate with my old data. Okay. So now I have to identify what is the max date in my old data, which is 6/6/2024. So with that date as a reference, I will pull on all the records greater than this date, which is 7th June. Okay. So now let's go back to the extract. So now, so now the logic should be, let me load the data from QED. Okay. So I will say concatenate. This is optional because the table structure remains the same. So automatically these two will get concatenated, but still I'm just mentioning it for our reference. So this is going to be my old data, and this will be the new data. So I already have the old data in my QED. I'm reading it. I'm going to concatenate this with the new data. Okay, so what is new data here? Any record where this transaction date is greater than the max date from this data. So my historical data, I have 6th June as the maximum date. So I have to capture that maximum date somewhere, store it in a variable, and put it over here. So that will be my reference. So date greater than that will be captured, right? So now, how do I get the max data from my historical uh, data? So for that, I will read the historical data. So let's give a name. Let's say last updated date. Okay. So this table will have information about the last transaction or last updated date. So what I need is, I just need the max transaction date from the QED. Okay, I'll call this as max date. Okay, so this table will have only one record, which is nothing but the max date, transaction date. So now I have to retrieve that and store it into a variable. So let me use let followed by the variable name v max date. So I'm going to use peak function. So peak function can get me the values inside this. Okay, inside this uh, field, I need the first record, so it is 0 from this table. Okay, so since there are no other tables, it is optional. Even if I don't give, it is going to fetch from here, but still I'm mentioning the table name. Okay, so what this max date is going to do is, let me put an exit script here. I'll just quickly reload. You could see one record fetched, which is nothing but the one single max date. So we could see it is retrieved as a number in a number format. Let me quickly check the variable. So I have the variable over here. Let me quickly evaluate the variable max date. So it should return a number because that's how it is captured. So I'll just convert this into date. Okay, so I got the max date. So this is what we need now. So now that I have the date captured here, I can use this variable as a reference here. Okay. So date of this variable. So any date which is greater than this, okay, only those records will be pulled now from the source. So it should be two new records, correct? These two ID 7 and 8. Okay, so 7 and 8 from the source, only two records, the remaining from my existing QED. So in total it should be 8 records. So 8 records will be stored into QED now. Okay, so let's quickly reload this. Okay, so total 8 lines fetched. From here only 2 lines fetched, so those two are the new record, right? So along with the historical record we have fetched total 8 records. So now let's save this. Now let's go back to the application. Application is nothing but it reads from the QED. So now QED should have all the data. So now let me reload this. When I reload, I should see two more records getting added here. Okay, so we got 7 and 8. So this is how we implement incremental load. So we pull only the new set of data from the data source. So it avoids overhead on the data source, right? We don't have to spend resource on loading millions of records every time. So all we have to do is implement this and fetch only the new record, avoid overload on the Qlik server on the database as well. So hope we got a basic understanding of incremental load and how to implement this insert only mode. Please do let me know in the comment section for any clarification. Thanks for watching.